In this book, named Incognito, David Eagleman explores the unconscious part of our brains that controls our actions, desires, and thoughts. He says, all of our lives, our cognition, our thoughts, our beliefs, all of these are underpinned by these massive lightning storms of activity, and yet we don't have any awareness of it. What we find is that our brains have colossal things happening in them all the time. Hello, my name is Gökçe and I'm a fourth-year artificial intelligence engineering student. Today I'll be discussing the book named Incognito and drawing parallels between neuroscience and artificial intelligence. So let's uncover intriguing similarities between these two fields. David Eagleman is an American neuroscientist, author, and science communicator. He also holds a position as a neuroscience professor at Stanford University and is CEO and co-founder of Neurosensory. They make special devices to help people with their senses like touching and hearing.
Picks up
Most
on the
speakers keep their clothes on.
yeah, not this one. This is by the end of the talk it'll be the full Monty. Anyway, so what's going on is the sound is getting picked up and translated into patterns of vibration on my body. Each of these are vibratory motors. And so what's happening is as I speak, the sound is getting captured and turned into patterns of vibration, and deaf people can come to understand the world this way.
So I picked up this book because I'm really interested in computational neuroscience, and since I know about artificial intelligence, I figured out that learning about brain would be useful for me. So I chose this book because I really learn about brain but without getting bored with too much stuff, you know. So what is computational neuroscience? Well, it's often referred to as theoretical neuroscience or mathematical neuroscience, and is a fascinating field that delves deep into the intricacies of the brain. And it aims to decode how our brains use electrical and chemical signals to process information. It delves into the inner workings of neurons and draws brain models on computers and builds learning models to understand how our brains remember or adapt. So also in this field, AI researchers draw inspiration from the brain's architecture and information processing to develop machine learning models and also neural networks. Neural networks, a fundamental component of AI inspired by the structure and function of biological neurons. These networks consist of interconnected artificial neurons that process information in a manner similar how the neurons work in our brains. So in this video, I'm going to list 10 things that are related to artificial intelligence and neural networks from the quotes that I've underlined while reading. However, this book is truly inspiring and teaches a lot about the brain, and I highly recommend reading this book. 1. Weights. In 1824, Johann Friedrich Herbert, I hope I'm pronouncing well, proposed a structured mathematical framework for understanding ideas. He suggested that ideas could be opposed by opposite ideas, weakening them and causing them to fall, actually sink below a threshold of awareness. Conversely, ideas with similarities could support each other, and Herbert introduced the concept of apperceptive mass to explain that ideas become conscious through assimilation with other ideas already in consciousness, and highlighting the existence of a boundary between conscious and unconscious thoughts. So his framework for understanding ideas exhibits similarities within the concept of weights in neural networks. Weights in neural networks are numerical parameters that determine the strength of connections between neurons and different layers. These weights are learned during the training process and are essential for the network to make accurate predictions by adjusting the importance of various input features. In both cases, there is an emphasis on the notion of opposition and support. Just as Herbert proposed that ideas could oppose each other or support each other, neural networks assign weights to connections between neurons, with positive weights supporting the activation of connected neurons and negative weights inhibiting them. 2. Black box. Charles Sherrington was awestruck by the lack of awareness about the vast mechanics under the surface. After all, despite his considerable expertise with nerves, muscles, and tendons, he noted that when he went to pick up a piece of paper, I have no awareness of the muscles as such at all. I execute the movement rightly and without difficulty. This reminds me of the black box theory or black box problem. The black box problem in machine learning refers to the lack of transparency in neural networks. These models can make highly accurate predictions, but they don't provide a clear explanation of how they arrived at those predictions. In Sherrington's case, despite his expertise in muscles and nerves, he was unaware of the intricate mechanics involved in a simple action. Similarly, in neural networks, despite their ability to perform complex tasks, the internal operations and representations are often opaque, making them function like black boxes where the detailed processes are not readily understandable from the outside. So, 3. Training. Patients who surgically recover their eyesight after decades of blindness, they do not suddenly see the world, but instead must learn to see again. Their brain must learn how to interpret the data coming in. In the case of patients recovering their eyesight, they need to learn how to see again because their brains must adapt to new sensory input. Similarly, in neural networks, training involves teaching the network to learn from data. During training, neural networks adjust their internal parameters to recognize patterns and make predictions based on the input data. This process is akin to the patient's brains learning how to interpret visual data again after regaining eyesight. So both scenarios involve a learning process where systems adapt to new information or data. 4. Feedback mechanism and backpropagation. Early notions about the brain likened it to a computer with information flowing in one-way direction. However, this idea changed as scientists found that throughout the brain there is as much feedback as feed-forward, a feature of brain wiring that is technically called recurrence and colloquially called loopiness. Just as early notions of the brain envisioned one-way information flow but later discovered feedback processes, neural networks employ feedback backpropagation to optimize their performance through iterative adjustments, similar to the brain's recurrence or loopiness. These parallels underscore the inspiration drawn from brain functioning in developing artificial neural networks. 5. Trial and error. During World War II, under constant threat of bombings, the British had a great need to distinguish incoming aircraft quickly and accurately. With a little ingenuity, the British finally figured out how to successfully train new spotters by trial and error feedback. A novice would hazard a guess and the expert would say yes or no. Eventually, the novices became, like their mentors, vessels of the mysterious, ineffable expertise. Trial and error approach is also used when the machine learning models does not have prior knowledge or a clear understanding of the problem it is trying to solve. Instead of using predefined algorithms or strategies, models explore different possibilities through experimentation and evaluation that outcomes to determine which ones lead to desired results. 6. Black world problem. Decades ago, computer scientist Marvin Minsky and his team proposed a solution to complex robotics problems by using specialized sub-agents, small computer programs that each handled a specific task within a hierarchy. While this approach didn't completely solve the problem, it introduced the concept of interconnected, mindless sub-agents, resembling how biological brains might function as collections of neurons, machine-like components. This idea marked a significant shift in understanding brain operation. Minsky suggested that human minds may be collections of enormous numbers of machine-like connected sub-agents that are themselves mindless. I would like to tell about Marvin Minsky because he's an important figure in artificial intelligence field. So Marvin Minsky was a prominent figure in artificial intelligence and cognitive science. He introduced frames for organizing knowledge in AI, co-authored a book on neural networks, proposed a society of mind. This is very important, by the way, and theory of human cognition, made contributions to robotics and received the Turing Award in 1969 for his pioneering AI work. When I read this article, I thought the blog's world problem belonged to Minsky, but I learned that the real owner of the problem was Terry Allen Winograd. I hope I'm pronouncing well. Even though their names are not mentioned together in this study, as far as I researched, they know each other and even had an interview together. I found that. So what is the blog's world problem? Let's get there. The blog's world problem is a classic artificial intelligence problem that involves moving blocks from one configuration to another using a robot's arm. The goal is to find a sequence of actions that transforms the initial arrangement of blocks into a desired target configuration while adhering to a set of defined rules. 7. Pattern recognition. Minds seek patterns. In a term introduced by science writer Michael Shermer, they are driven toward patternicity, the attempt to find structure in meaningless data. Evaluation favors pattern seeking because it allows the possibility of reducing mysteries to fast and efficient programs in the neural circuitry. Well, patternicity in neuroscience and pattern recognition in machine learning are alike because they both involve the human brain or computer systems trying to make sense of information by finding patterns in it. Okay, 8. Occams Razor. Honestly, I wanted to include this quote in this video because Occams Razor was mentioned in our machine learning lesson, so I said why to not put this in my video. So Occams Razor in machine learning advises choosing simpler models when they perform as well as complex ones. This principle promotes model simplicity, regularization, feature selection, and interpretability to prevent overfitting and improve understanding. However, it acknowledges that in some cases the complexity may be necessary, emphasizing the importance of balancing simplicity with predictive power. Number 9. Brain versus AI. Imagine an assembly line in a factory where each worker is really good at one specific job. They do their tasks perfectly, but they don't have to make decisions or think about the big picture, right? Now, think about how politics works in a democracy. Different political parties have their own ideas and argue about how to run the country. It's like a battle of ideas, and the decision making process is the most important part, right? Well, our brains are kind of like democracies. They are made up of many different parts that have their own expertise. These parts compete and sometimes argue with each other when we are trying to make decisions or do things. This is something our brains can do that the modern computers can't. The main point here is that biology, like our brains, doesn't settle for just one solution. It keeps coming up with the new ways to solve problems. But why does it keep changing instead of sticking with what works? Unlike computer programmers who finish one task and move on to the next, nature doesn't have a boss telling it to stop. So when it finds a solution, it doesn't stop there. It keeps experimenting and inventing new ways to solve problems. This is different from how artificial intelligence works. In AI, once a problem is solved, programmers move on to the next one. And lastly, number 10, suggestions. Dr. Eagleman proposes that the theme of rivals framework is crucial for advancing artificial intelligence. They argue that previous AI approaches have divided tasks among sub-agents, but these programs lack effectiveness without diverse perspectives. To create thinking robots, the challenge lies in continually reinventing sub-agents with overlapping solutions and pitting them against each other. This approach, inspired by biology, suggests that it's better to encourage multiple, overlapping ways to solve within a team. He recommends using an evolutionary approach to cultivate such a team, randomly generating programs and allowing them to reproduce with small mutations, thereby continuously discovering solutions rather than pursuing a single perfect one. Okay, so that's it, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Feel free to leave your suggestions and thoughts in the comments below. So until the next time, stay inspired and keep creating. Bye bye.